Hey friends, welcome to our Midweek Moment. Pastor Nicole here. So glad you clicked on. This week we are kicking off a new sermon series called Haunted, the Ghost of Life's Past, Present, and Future. And so this past weekend, we talked about the ghost of the past and what happens when we are haunted by the ghost of our past. And we took a look at the story of the disciple Peter, and what happens when he denies Christ 3 times and how Jesus kind of handles that when he comes back to life. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, I'd encourage you to do so, especially if you find yourself haunted by some poor decisions that you've made in your past, or if you have just kind of that reel of mistakes that keeps playing in your mind over and over again. And maybe that sermon will help you kind of figure out how to move past that. I wanted to spend some time, though, talking about another ghost from our past that often haunts us, but maybe we don't talk about it as much, and that is the ghost of past nostalgia. Corbin and I were watching something the other day, and somebody mentioned nostalgia, and Corbin said, "What's nostalgia?" And so I was explaining to him about what nostalgia is and how it's this memories from the past that we kind of think of fondly, and when we think back, it just kind of warms our heart and makes us feel happy. And that oftentimes when we look back at certain things in our past, we think about it with nostalgia. And you might be wondering, well, like, why then are we haunted by the ghost of past nostalgia? Because nostalgia seems like a great thing, right? Like, it makes us feel warm. It makes us feel like, oh, I just really loved that time in my life, or I loved how things were back then. But the way that we're haunted by that is when we allow nostalgia to turn into, ugh, I wish it was like it was. We didn't used to do this. Things didn't used to be like this. We didn't used to have to do this. Things were better back then. I think we've all been there, right? We've all had those thoughts of like, oh yeah, life was better back then. Life was better back in the day. Life was easier back in the day. We didn't have to do this back in the day, so why do we have to do it now? And sometimes that ghost of nostalgia can really lead us astray. Because I think what we all know about memories is that things in the past, the sweet things get super sweet, and sometimes the hard things even can dissipate a little bit. You know, we think about this in childbirth, right? That we often think about how wonderful it was to give birth, but we forget like how painful and terrible it was. Like our brain just sort of like pushes that out. That's nostalgia at work, right? That sometimes we can look back and think about all the really wonderful things and how good it was, but our brain has kind of pushed out some of the not so good things that were going on at the same time. We just don't remember them because we want to focus on the good stuff. So I think the challenge in our lives, and really the challenge in the church in particular, is that we don't hearken back to that nostalgia too much. That we don't say, well, we never used to do it that way, so why are we doing it that way now? Well, because things have changed, and so the church needs to change in certain ways as we move forward to continue to reach out to people in our world and to serve people in our world well. And so sometimes we have to change some things. You probably had the experience of walking into a church that feels like it's from the 50s, like the decorations are from the 50s, the paint looks like it's from the 50s. It may be clean and nice, but it looks like it's from a different decade because they've just kind of clung to that, right? And that's how they've always done it. And so you don't want to change. And change is hard. I'll be the first to admit that. Change is so hard. Sometimes nostalgia keeps us from wanting to change in ways that we have to change in order to continue to move forward. So in our own lives, we might think about how nostalgia can hold us captive a little bit, holds us captive to focus on the past and how things were, rather than being able to focus on the here and now or even into the future. So I just thought that was maybe another little piece of the sermon that I would have added in if I had more time. But just wanted to share that with you, that sometimes the past that we're haunted by isn't necessarily really scary, terrible memories or bad things that we've done. Sometimes it's just that nostalgia and thinking back to times that seem sweeter, seem easier, seem better, and it can hold us captive from making the changes that we need to make in order to move forward. So as we move on in our week, I just invite you to think a little bit about that in your life. How do you look at nostalgia? Is it holding you back? Is it haunting you? And join us this weekend. We're going to keep moving forward in our series. We're going to be talking about how we are haunted by the ghost of our present, and what exactly does that mean, and how do we combat it? So join us this weekend, whether in person or online, as we take a look at the ghost of the present. Hope you guys have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time. Bye.